truth always holds. Growth takes intentional effort. You cannot expect to grow strong physically if you never move your body. Just as you cannot expect to grow strong spiritually if you walk the journey of faith in isolation. God has wired us to grow through relationships, not apart from them. In fact, it would be impossible for us to grow otherwise because love requires another being. You cannot learn patience, forgiveness, generosity, or grace without someone to extend it to. You cannot experience encouragement, comfort, or accountability without another person present in your life. Some of the most significant shaping of your character will happen through your attachments to others and your willingness to live with mutual accountability. These are what I am calling your relational muscles. If your relational muscles are weak, you will find it hard to stand strong in your faith when life gets heavy. But when these muscles are strong, you will have the security, support, and resiliency needed to live out the calling God has placed on your life. Relationships that are healthy and anchored in Christ function like a spiritual safety net. They keep you from falling into isolation when you feel discouraged, confused, or tempted. They also hold you so you can keep pressing forward in your faith when you feel like giving up. Paul understood this deeply. That's why he wrote to Timothy, his young protege, saying, "And the things you have heard me saying in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." Paul is telling Timothy, don't just keep this faith to yourself. Invest it into others who can carry it forward. That's the heart of building relational muscles. It's not just about finding people who will be there for you. It's about being someone others can count on too. One of the greatest needs in human heart is the need to feel safe. Without the sense of safety, we find it hard to open up, trust, or receive help. Spiritually, this safety comes through relationships where you know the other person will point you towards Jesus, no matter what season of life you're in. These relationships are not about convenience or popularity. They are about being anchored to people who care more about your walk with God than about telling you what you wanted to hear. Think of Paul and Timothy again. Timothy knew that Paul loved him enough to challenge him, correct him, and encourage him in the truth. That bond created a secure foundation that allowed Timothy to grow as a leader in the early church. In your own life, this might look like a mentor who calls you out in love when you start drifting spiritually, or a friend who checks in regularly just to ask how your time with God is going. This kind of spiritual security is not built overnight. It grows through consistent interactions, through showing up for each other in both joyful and difficult moments. If you're lacking that kind of secure relationships right now, don't just wait for one to appear. Begin by asking yourself, who in my life consistently points me back to Jesus? Who has proven trustworthy over time? And just as importantly, who sees me as someone they can trust? Strong relationships are a two-way street. You can't expect to receive safety and support if you're not also offering to others. We live in a world where friendship is often defined by likes, follows, or casual conversations. But safe people, the ones who help you grow spiritually, are much more than that. Safe people are trustworthy. They speak truth with grace. They keep your confidence. They don't use your vulnerability against you. Most importantly, they encourage you to follow Christ, even when it's uncomfortable. Consistent practices are just as important as safe people. By consistent practices, I mean intentional habits in your relationships that keep you connected to God together. This could be weekly prayer calls, reading the same book of the Bible and talking about it, serving in ministry together, or even setting aside a monthly day to fast and pray for each other's needs. In Acts 2, we see that the early church devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings and to fellowship, to breaking the bread, and to prayer. That's not random or occasional. It's regular, intentional connection. The result was deep unity, generosity, and joy. When you share consistent practices with someone, it keeps your relationship focused on God's purpose. Without them, relationships tend to drift into shallow or unhelpful conversations. If you already have safe people in your life, ask yourself, what habits are we practicing together? If none come to mind, choose one to start this week. Even simple 10-minute prayer together each week can make a big difference over time. There's one more thing besides safe people and consistent practices. If you wanted to build relational muscles, you cannot avoid vulnerability. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage. It means letting someone see the real you, your struggles, your doubts, your temptations, instead of hiding behind a mask of perfection. Without vulnerability, accountability cannot exist. Galatians 6:2 says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. You cannot carry a burden you don't know about it. That's why vulnerability matters. When you open up about a struggle, you give someone else the opportunity to support you, pray for you, and remind you of God's truth. On the flip side, when you refuse to be honest, you block the very help God wants to send through his people. I remember a time in my life when God used two friends to be honest with my husband and I. They told us with love that we were being irresponsible, that we needed to stay put. For most of my life, because of past traumas, I had been addicted to fleeing difficult situations. The only solution I ever saw to my problems were to move, quit my job, or end a relationship. Every time we faced financial difficulties, I believed moving was the answer. I drove my family insane with that pattern. But one day, a close friend of ours said the hard things we didn't want to hear. They told us we needed to stop running. Because of them, we didn't move that time. We stayed. And I truly believe that the stability we have today started with that moment. We still move often as a pastor, but now it's not because I'm fleeing. It's only when God makes it clear that it's time to go. Looking back, I can even see that God used my history as a frequent mover to prepare us to be okay with change, because serving him often means living with flexibility. But that day, those friends helped me break a destructive pattern. That's the power of safe, honest relationship. God can use them to stop us from running from his plan and instead anchor us where we need to be. You may be wondering, what if I open up and get hurt? That's a real risk. And that is why discernment matters. Not everyone is safe. And you should prayerfully choose the people you can open up to. But if you never risk vulnerability, you will never experience the depth of connection God intends for his people. Building relational muscles is like training in a gym. You cannot do it once and expect lasting results. It takes repeated effort over time. This week, I want you to take 3 steps. First, identify your safe people. Make a list of 2 or 3 individuals you know you can trust to point you towards Jesus. Second, start a consistent practice. Choose one habit to practice today: prayer, scripture reading, or serving. And third, practice vulnerability. Share one honest prayer request or personal struggle with someone you trust. These steps may feel small, but over time, they will build strength in your relationship that will carry you through seasons of joy and seasons of difficulty. As you reflect on your relationships, ask yourself, Am I the kind of person others can trust? Do I create safety for others? Am I investing in habits that strengthen our walk with God? Am I willing to be vulnerable so that real accountability can happen? God has called us to live out our faith together, not apart. You cannot carry your own burdens forever, and you are never meant to. Likewise, others are waiting for you to help carry theirs. When you attach yourself to safe people and practice mutual accountability, you will find that your faith grows deeper, your endurance grows stronger, and your joy grows richer. Relationships are God's gems for spiritual growth. They test us, strengthen us, and shape us into people who reflect Christ's love. When we attach ourselves to God and to His people, when we commit to consistent practices that keep us centered on Him, and when we choose vulnerability over hiding, we'll build relational muscles that last. My prayer is that you will not settle for shallow connections, but that you will actively seek that kind of relationships that anchor you to Jesus and help you carry the weight of life with joy and hope. As we close this part of our service, I want to invite you to take what we've talked about and move into the time of conversation together. This is your chance to open up, to listen, to be real with each other about building these relational muscles in your life. For those of you watching online later, I would love for you to join the conversation in the comments. Share one thing God is putting in your heart today, or one step that you wanted to take to grow in your relationships. And don't miss next week. It will be the last service of our summer season. Our topic will be This is the Life We Were Called to, and we will be talking about purpose and community. It's going to be a great way to wrap up the series, and I would love for you to be part of it.
And hello. So at this time, I'm going to ask you to, all of the panelists, to turn on your cameras. And this is where we will start our discussion for today. And I wanted to open up here for me to be able to see the results of the poll, because I think this is a good conversation starter. So the first question was, when you go through something difficult, what is your first move? And most people answer that they start with praying alone. So the questions were reach out to someone I trust, pray alone, try to fix it on my own, avoid and try and get distracted. Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, because I try to be very honest. I usually, this is my default mode, is try to fix it. Then I remember, oh, there's God. So bad, I know. As a pastor, I know. It's just the default mode from not believing in God for so many years in my life. But I want to ask you guys, let me start with, let's say, Josh. Why do you think people decide to pray alone? That's the majority of the people.
Well, I think the majority of people that may have answered in this case have some pre-existing relationship with God, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you get to a certain level in your spiritual walk where you start to realize that God is not simply the thing that your parents taught you. He's not simply the thing maybe you grew up in the church. He's not simply the thing that you happen to show up to church every week for. He's actually someone who desires that deep relationship with you. There's something more about him than simply somebody to worship. He's actually somebody to be in relationship with. And just like one of the answers was like reach out to a friend. Prayer is exactly that, except you're tapping into the all powerful. That's the friend that you're tapping into. You're not tapping
Yes.
into just anyone. And it's very good to have friends, of course. It's very good to have those people that you can reach out to and lean on. And that's what God has other people for us in this life for. But he is the one who is wanting to draw near to you. And James chapter 4, I believe, and verse 8, it says that if you draw near to God, he will draw near to you. And prayer is one of those places that you can draw near to him. It
Yes.
is your avenue to have a conversation with him, lean on him, and actually reach out and ask him for help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talking about this idea of reaching out to God, and I think that's the safest and the best thing. I also like to be very real. A lot of times we give answers that we want, that we think other people want us to answer, and this is not the case for everybody. Like I mentioned to you guys, first I panic, I try to fix it myself, then I write, oh, let me. I'm getting better at remembering God first. But the other thing is, like Joshua just mentioned, is reaching out to a friend as well. Uh, Pastor Sebastian, what do you think makes someone a safe person that we can feel comfortable and confident to talk to this person?
Yeah, that's good. I think it might be different for each of us. I
Mhm.
know for me, it's people that have journeyed with me that know me. And I think it depends on the situation, right? So most clearly now we're making a transition from full-time pastoral ministry to now a chaplaincy role at a college. And there are certain people I'll talk to that have seen, especially in our journey with working in the church and whatnot, that have seen our growth and have been part of that partnership that I know I can call that they'll say, this fits or doesn't. If I call someone that maybe I just play soccers with every week, or, different type of relationships that we all have, right? Coworkers or family or people that we do life with in different ways. I think to me, it depends. To me, it falls down to what is the situation that I'm praying about. If it's hey, I want to get a new car. There's people I know I can go to get that. I got to get new soccer shoes. I know who I have people. It's not going to be the same group, right? So to me, it kind of falls upon what is the type of situation that I'm in that I'm needing this kind of help. And I think through experience and through time and through lived experiences, you get to have hopefully those groups of people, and it can be a big group, it can be a very small group that you trust that their word and kind of one of the questions was they're comfortable with you're comfortable with them speaking into your life. As uncomfortable as it can be, you're uncomfortable with accepting what they're about to say. It might take you a little bit to accept it, but that's kind of where I'm at. Depending on what it is, I have kind of like pockets of family and friends that I reach out to based on what's happening. So
And you're talking, and I start laughing because I remember a situation. Sometimes we also look for those people. Let's say I want to buy a new car. And I'm going to look for the people that will support me buying the car. Not
right.
always we are
It's true.
honest with
That's
ourselves.
true. It's true.
And that is tricky because when we're looking for just the people that will agree with us, hey, you're doing a good job, how are we going to grow if we only go to those people? But also we have to be careful to go to safe people that are not going to be just toxic people, that we have this need of being accepted, and we continue going to these people that are not safe, that are not healthy. And I started laughing because I remember few years ago, Sebastian wanted to get a dog, and his wife did not want him to get a dog. Do you remember that? Then, then him and his wife were in my house, and I started telling all of the great things about having my dog, and then he ended up getting 3 dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
That
So
that
it
was
worked out.
that
Thank
was
you, Chris. You
not
were
the
great.
agreement.
That was great. You were great.
But I wanted to stay a little more in the story of in the story, no, on the topic of safe people. I want to have the participation of those in the chat and the panelists as well. But I would love for you guys to participate, to give answers, to give questions. But I want to ask everybody, do you feel that you have the safe person right now? And we're talking about more things that are deeper issues. I'm not only talking about getting a car, getting a dog, but I'm talking about, like, I'm depressed, I'm not doing well, I'm going through something. Do you feel like you have this person? I would love to hear from the people in the chat. You don't have to disclose, oh, I have, and this is the person, but just say, I have, I don't have. How about the panel? Liz, do you have this person?
Yes, absolutely. I do. I think it's very important in every kind of phase of life, different seasons of life, and even in our own personal and professional and spiritual development.
Yes. Johnny.
I do, and something that a previous counselor told me once that I find to be very interesting is, you know, when I don't, I'm trying to think exactly what they said, but I might not remember it, so I might paraphrase. But it was something along the lines of, those who have suffered the most, something along the lines of those who have suffered the most are the most wise, or they have the most input. So, I have friends and close family who, have gone through difficulties, and I often find that those who have suffered the most have the most advice and the most love to give. Those who have been mistreated the most have the most love to give sometimes, so um, I think, it's very important to look at the person to decide, who it is that you're going to allow yourself to be intimate to, who you're going to express these feelings you may have with someone who may have some experience, or who can relate and have compassion towards you with whatever that situation may be. But definitely, definitely.
Josh.
Um, so I think that um, yeah, I'm reminded of the quote by Teddy Roosevelt. Does anybody know who Brene Brown is? Have you heard of Brene Brown? So she wrote this book called, I think it's called Daring Greatly. And she gets it from this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. And the paraphrase is basically this, like, those who go into the arena of life and they're willing to fail, they can do so daring greatly, as in they can do so going in, they can be vulnerable, they can go and try, and they might fail. But those who don't go into the arena, or don't go into the arena at all, and they have no way of knowing if they're going to succeed or fail. And so when you have someone to reach out to, and maybe you have this feeling that, hey, who can I go to? It's difficult to have those people in your life, especially as you get older, especially as your relationships change. Maybe you get married, you have children. Now your friends, maybe they're beyond that. Maybe they're not quite there yet. And so now these relationships change. There's going to be this sense of vulnerability that you're going to experience going into the relationship. And so, like, for me personally today, I have friends that I can reach out to, of course. I have relationships that I've built over decades with people that I love, but I'm also learning that those relationships aren't the same, and that I actually have to keep stepping into the arena and being vulnerable towards either new people or a relationship that's dynamics have changed.
Mm-hmm. Pastor Sebastian.
Yeah, I'd say I think my wife is one of the most, the person that knows me the most. My mom too. I have a really great relationship with my mom after my dad passed. We've always been close, but that pushed us even closer. And so she's one that I can share a lot with. So I think, yeah, and I love what Josh was saying too. I think of that idea of, that vulnerability welcomes or invites vulnerability too. And so I think being able to, as scary as it is, if you don't have that, I think me going into a new situation now, not knowing a lot of people in this community that we're moving into, there's going to be a lot of that opening up of ourselves to, and it's scary, right? Because you don't know people's agendas, and if they want that, if they have the time for that. But I think being open to being open, or being, vulnerable, and doing that. So yeah, I have a few, and again, to me, I guess I'm very compartmentalized in that sense. But for sure, my wife is one that really knows a lot. Um, I can share, a lot in that space.
Talking about vulnerability and like a segue from what you guys were talking about. What if, and I forgot that this question was in the poll. By the way, when I'm looking sideways, because I have two screens here, not because I'm ignoring you, I'm listening. But, anyways, I completely forgot that in the poll actually already asked if you have that safe person to go to. And the majority of you said that you do have, but some said that they don't. So, how do you think a person who it's listening to this for the first time, because believe it or not, well, I think you guys will believe it because I heard there is a epidemic at this moment is loneliness. So we have a great number of people. We are blessed to have the church, to have the family, but not a lot of people have it. And my challenge today in the sermon that God put in my heart was that we need other people. This idea that I don't need anybody. I'm self-sufficient. This is an illusion that we put in our society today. We put in our minds that was convinced, but when we stop to think about it and we see the research on mental health, I don't think we're doing well with this complete individualistic idea. I don't need anybody. So the challenge today was, did you understand that God wants us to grow and to be closer to Him through also the relationships that we have with others? So this is a great challenge because the majority of us, what we do, we walk into a church, we sit down, we listen, we get up and we leave. And God is telling us that, no, I made you relational. Actually, when we understand that God is love, just that alone, we already understand. To be love, it requires already two people. When we wanted to say that I'm a Christian, it requires us to live in community. Have you guys ever stopped to think about that? So it's hard in a society that teaches and preach the completely opposite, right? So if this is a challenge for you today, if you're listening to this and it's like, okay, I never thought that I needed that community, because a lot of people that go to church already, they already understand that, but some people don't. For those people, I think I'm gonna start with Johnny, just picking on you right now. What do you think, and maybe like one or two people answer on this, how do you think somebody can start finding that safe person?
That's such a complex question. I mean, first let's address the necessity. There's absolutely a necessity. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is not even a religious thing. This is a basic thing. The need for a relationship, the need for a connection. It's fundamental. So I think maybe historically that might be harder to answer, but I think present day there's the blessing of technology. Maybe one's default way of thinking would be, okay, well, I need to find someone in person, or I need to go out. And if you have accessibility to those areas, those communities, and you can involve yourself, absolutely. Not everyone has those opportunities, or that's not as feasible. That's where the blessing of technology comes in. There's a huge, huge online world where not only can you participate, but you may even be able to participate anonymously. So if you're asking yourself, where can I find that one person to be intimate with, to be vulnerable with, to share and to help and to love and to support each other? Well, the choice is yours. Now, it's not easy. None of them are easy. In no way is being vulnerable easy, whether it's in person or online, being fully exposed or anonymous. It's never easy. But you should take a look and see what is feasible, what you're comfortable with doing. To do any of this, you have to feel comfortable in the first place. And from there, decide what avenue to look at. But I guarantee you, person listening, I guarantee you, there's at least one more person in this world of 8 billion people, which is the last metric today. There's at least one person who is also searching for you. There's one person in this world who's looking for you to be intimate and to share and to help each other grow. So it's very likely that other person's already out there looking for you, waiting for you, trying to find you. This is the day for you to step up, go out and meet that person and grow together.
I like that, and I like that you included the online because that is actually the purpose for this. I started the reason, and by the way, some of you, Sebastian, Josh, and Liz, is the first time that you guys are joining. You might not know exactly how this started, but basically, we started going to, well, first of all, I'm doing a lot of online different things that I'm doing online. And just one second. Okay, so I'm doing a lot of these online things and I'm getting a lot of DMs. And the type of conversations that I'm having on the DMs are things that people would never walk into a church and say it. Never. Because honestly, those are the kind of things that people say just because they're behind the screen. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the courage to say it. But these are deep needs that these people have. And I was like, if this generation, because in the past, if we stop to think of, you guys are all too young for that. But anyways, when I grew up, I would go out and I would have like a huge group of friends that we would play, let's say, ball or whatever. And then I had that more intimate group of friends, those like one-on-one conversations that were deeper. But they were all in person. Now with this society the way that it is, a lot of people, even when they say, oh, these people are online just to get likes, even that, I started looking at the psychology behind that and I started analyzing. It's kind of like Sebastian loves playing soccer. My other Sebastian here, my husband too, loves playing soccer. And they how do you say, they make a goal and they run around and they hype each other, and some of the Brazilian teams, they dance, but that's their moment of like celebrating. And the online has a translation for that. That is the likes. That is like how many people are seeing. We think, oh, they're just showing off, they just want the likes. No, we all love sharing and we're happy. We get married, we share our pictures, we have our kids, we want to share. We all enjoy having those relationships. Yeah, it can become very toxic. You live just for the likes and it has the other ugly side, but there is a need. And that's why I start realizing if people are opening up more online and it's easier through a screen, why not try something where people can talk and actually, and there is a reason why people can participate through the Q&A that is completely anonymous, because there may be people in the chat that have things that are going on in their lives that they don't have the courage to tell anybody. But we wanted to be the safe space for you guys. And Johnny gave a great example. And yes, opening up, vulnerability. Now, how about as a group, like we are doing this right now? Josh, what do you think as a group we can help people feel safer? Not only the things that I already mentioned, but the things on the sermon or ideas that you have, like how we can make this community the place where people can open up.
As the saying goes, you got 2 ears and one mouth. You're supposed to do double the listening instead of talking. And what I found in my own personal experience is when I have an open ear and I'm willing to listen to what people have to say, that creates an aura, a place in which people can share, and they know that I am not there listening with a judging ear and ready to speak with a judging mouth, but rather someone who's listening with an ear that truly wants to know what they have to say, what they're going through. And sometimes the best thing to say, especially in like a grief situation, is nothing. Right? We don't have to have all the words, we don't have to have all the actions outside of simply being there and listening to people sometimes. Sometimes words are required. Sometimes very specific actions are required. These are all good things. And I think leaning on the Lord in those areas, we talked about who do we go to when you have a problem, right? It kind of goes back to that first question of if I am sitting here and I am trying to be the person that someone else is leaning on, I'm trying to be that safe place for someone. Actually taking that to the Lord first, praying about it, and saying, Lord, how can I help this person? He will be one who answers. He'll show up in those moments and guide you in a way that'll be helpful to the other person, and it'll also be a blessing to you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I was looking again here at the poll, and the question was, which is harder for you, to be honest about your struggles or to ask for help? And 100% everybody answer that the hardest thing is asking for help. Liz, what are your take on why do you think it's so hard for people to ask for help?
Yeah, I think that it's also hard for me to ask for help, to be honest. So I think that when you reflect on yourself as to like why it's hard for yourself to ask for help, it could be past experiences. Um, it could be past relationships that were destroyed or that affected you, that you felt betrayed or whatever it may be. And a lot of that, we it will take time to heal, to forgive, and build, learn to build new relationships. But to be able to build new relationships, um, you need to be open for that. And I think to be able to get into the space that you need to be able to be open for that, you need to also learn how to what trust means to you and how to build trust. So like for me, like this kind of tags into like the question that you gave to Johnny of like how do we identify as someone being safe. So for me, I think that when I reflect on that, like what does it mean to be safe? So that's a question for each and every person here. What does safety mean to you? Because it will be different for each and every person. And understanding also more about yourself will also help you understand what trust is for you and the expectations that you have for others, as a person. So, what is your understanding like more about yourself, your personality, your needs, your way of speaking, your awareness? So, having even more awareness about yourself. So, being even able to get to have the opportunity to fellowship and be with others. Sometimes it's important to know and be and for me personally, it's to be with God and me. So and I also recognize that in the space, not only do we have extroverts and introverts, or introvert extroverts, extroverts introverts, or introverts introverts extroverts extroverts, right? But I think that that has a lot to do. That's very important to acknowledge about oneself, because if you are trying to act extroverted outside and it still makes you uneasy and uncomfortable inside, who's the only person that you're harming? Just yourself. So even when you are trying to make community and fellowship with community, you also have to have more awareness of yourself. For me, in that finding that awareness is in prayer, and also finding time to spend time walking in nature, and for some it's journaling, for some it's even in singing. Some people learn about themselves, whatever it may be for you. I invite you to do that, to find that out in terms of having that moment, interrupted moment, to just be able to understand more about yourself. Because when you start learning more about yourself, you start learning what kind of community you want to get involved in, what kind of people you want to let in your safe space, in your sacred moments. Who and what do you want to share, and how much you want to share with certain people? And also understand what types of expectations do you have for people, and if you are willing to share that with that person who you are speaking or sharing with.
Yes, and you have gone through some hard times lately. that I am sure we required you to ask for help. Poor Liz had to do surgery in both of your legs, right?
Both for my feet, but we won't get into that
Yeah.
social media.
But
What I'm saying is that, yes,
how hard was for you? Because in a situation like that, you're completely dependent on others.
absolutely.
How was
Well,
that for you?
I think that that's a great question, and I will share this, not to share about myself, because sometimes it's uncomfortable. And I will be
Oh
honest.
no, you don't have to go there if you don't
But
want to.
but I want to share a little bit, just because, in hopes that it can help someone. So in the moment, and I won't go into details, but in the moment where I needed help, I had no choice. I like to be very independent. If I can do it, I actually, I'll do it for myself, and I also do for others, right? And try to do for others as much as possible. But in a moment whenever you may also find yourself that you cannot do anything. So I don't know if anyone's gone through any kind of surgery in any part of their body. There is that moment, day, hours, whatever it may be, months, for some it's even years, where you find yourself like, even if you want to, even if you have the inner space, like the inner strength in your mind to want to do it, and you want to do certain things so you don't have to bother others, but your physical state does not allow you to, that is hard. If especially when you're someone that does not like asking for help. But it's those moments that it brings us to a different type of vulnerability, a different type of being open, of being humble, of being loved, of actually being open to being loved in those moments in a different way. Because sometimes, at least for me, serving others just brings me so much joy. But when you are the one that has to be helped, it takes a different turn. And accepting and being open to that love that others have for you, that your community, that, it's like, let yourself be loved. That's what I can say. Let yourself, those people that you have been, it will surprise you. I am so grateful to God, people that I had not remembered, for what I had done, because, for me, it's just automatic mode. But someone that would show up just to like be grateful and say, well, you were there when blah 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 happened, so I'm just happy to be here with you and for you. And so just accepting that love is just something so refreshing. I think that it's so important to understand that vulnerability is not weakness. I've been saying this, I think, for the past week many times in different conversations with different persons in different settings, but it really is true what I'm telling you. Vulnerability is not weakness, because when we are able to do that, actually you will, through time, you gain another sort of strength that you did not even know you had before or experienced before. So I invite you to embrace this vulnerability that you have, even though it is hard. Yes, it's not easy, but it's not impossible. As a Christian, for me, I find that peace with God, that process of that peace, of how to embrace that vulnerability, of how to accept being loved, etc., with God and with my community. So I also invite others to do so.
Yes, I have, as you're talking, and I realize that this happens to me quite often. Um, I'm going to ask this question, but in a little bit, I am going to let Johnny continue hosting, because I am here at the church because there's a memorial today that I'm part of the memorial, and I'm going to have to run out. But Johnny is going to continue until the end of our discussion. But there's something that you said there that it kind of clicked, because this is something that happens a lot to me. And it's probably because of childhood traumas and things in my past. But why is it so hard for us to accept love? Even sometimes the little things like my husband says, "Oh, you look so beautiful today." I'm like, what do you want? Why do we do that? I'm gonna have to go. But I will say, Sebastian, continue with the conversation. Answer that, and I will see you all next week. Uh, Thank you guys for showing up. Love you all. I'm so excited for the people that showed up today and those that will be watching soon. So see you guys later.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, great, great question to leave us there with. I think I don't know what you guys think, but I think we accept the love we think we deserve, and for whatever reasons it is, as you were mentioning, Liz, and as Chris was mentioning, it can be from maybe narratives and ideas and scripts that we grew up with. Maybe a lot of it can come from our childhood and upbringing, or maybe just relationships we've been on, and people that, as we were talking about, how we trust people that are able to speak into our lives and we can get counsel from. Maybe we've had bad experiences or unhealthy ones, and we allowed them space to speak into our lives, into the vulnerable spaces. And they spoke in ways that were not uplifting, but actually brought us down and were degrading and so then I think we also get jaded by the world, right? We are very we come in as children very like curious and pure and innocent. And as we grow up, we see that people fail. Our parents don't keep their promises. And we grow up and we're like, man, why did my parents not tell me the truth? Or things happen in family, at school. And as we grow up, we get more jaded so that even when someone says, hey, this is free, we're always like, there has to be where there's something, there's fine print somewhere. What is it? There's no reason that this is people aren't genuinely that good and freely loving and giving. And so I think we just, through life and what we see and what we're told, we don't believe um, that people can truly be genuinely good, right? It can be very hard. And if someone is being extra kind, we're like, as Chris said, right? What do you want? What are you trying to get out of this? Like, there has to be an agenda or a hidden thing that you're trying to get out of, and I can imagine that people that walked and talked with Jesus felt that way too, right? When he was just healing and loving and doing miracles, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna head out and go to another town and do some stuff." That's what can we pay you for your? Can we do? No, I'm just here to do good, to love on others, and so I think it's a total different way and approach of life that is contrary to what we're taught and what our world and society kind of operates from. So.
Great. That's great. And something I think that's good to remember, something that I believe we need to be conscious of is we take the word love and we take the concept of love and we think it's such a grandiose thing. We hold it to a very high standard. But ultimately, if you really look at the foundation of love, it is a human relationship. Love is a relationship between two humans, and there is no such thing as a perfect or flawless human relationship. Josh, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. Are we weary or hesitant to accept love because we know it is a human relationship and it could fail or it could have some negative things? Why are we hesitant to accept love?
So I came to this realization recently. A ministry that I have a lot of respect for called Light Bearers. They have this series that they go through, and I want to say it's the first one in the series talks about the concept of love. And I was always under the impression that love was between at minimum two people. But I tend to agree with how they present it, and love is actually between three people. The reason being is because if you have only two, right? Or let's start with one. If you have only one, there's nobody else to love beside yourself, and that's not really love. If you have two people, there can only be a direct relationship between the two, and there's no one else involved for you to actually um, fall on in terms of like if I only have my love focused on you and you're the only one to love, is that really love or are you just the only option? Where if there's a third person, so the minimum being three, if I love you and I love you equally, that is a choice, right? Because I actually have it now. This person over here to my left is a lovable person because of their uniqueness. And this person to my right is a lovable person because of their uniqueness. Some might say, especially in the Christian way of thinking, is, well, what about marriage? Isn't marriage between two people? Well, from a Christian perspective, not really. The Bible itself says that three cords woven together is not easily broken. If you only have two people in marriage, where's the third cord? That third cord is supposed to be God. And so when I think about this whole concept, I've always thought it to be interesting, and I don't know if you guys have dealt with this yourselves, but is it easier for you to accept those compliments and those forms of love from outside sources than from inside sources? And for me, sometimes it's easier to accept them from the outside than it is from the inside. The reason being is that from the inside, you've got to love me, right? My wife, if she's going to compliment me, she's got to love me, right? She got on the altar. She said, I do. She's going to be there till death do us part. At least I hope so. And in fact, I know so. But the thing is that you start to feel like, well, these people on the inside, they're here and they have to love me. So maybe it's not even the basis of what are you trying to get out of me, more than it is, well, that's already there, it's guaranteed. Where if it comes from an outside source, that outside source, you start to think, okay, yeah, they might be coming with some sort of agenda, as Sebastian was saying, and there might be that type of thought process. However, that person may have nothing to gain. And if they don't really have anything to gain and they're giving me that love in whatever form it looks like, that must be free flowing, and I can accept that easier than I can from even the inside. But if you think about that, even in the concept of perfect love being at minimum between three beings, that's part of that. If you think even in marriage, don't even think about it from the standpoint of Christianity and God being that third, but think about bringing a child into existence. You have at least one child, that's a third one. If you think about it, I love my wife and I love my daughter, and I would die for both of them. But just because I love my daughter does not mean I don't love my wife. Just because I love my wife does not mean I don't love my daughter. This is the basis in which I think of love. And if you think of it in that term, we've kind of tossed around this idea of community and the need for safe community and getting into that community. And it's like, literally, in terms of love, the more the merrier. And that's a very basic way of looking at it, but the more the merrier, the more the community, the happier that community and more love that community can experience.
I mean, Jesus loved everyone. A perfect example there. I want to now shift focus. For those who are newer, you may not know, but for those who have repeatedly joined us, probably our most common theme, our central theme, over these last few weeks has been vulnerability. What it means in practicality to be vulnerable, the benefits that can come from being vulnerable, and the difficulties of being vulnerable. A few days ago, I was listening to a sermon, and I'm going to give you guys this context so we can dive into a discussion here at the last few minutes we have, where it was talking about the famous story in the Bible where you have the disciples on the boat and Jesus comes walking on the water. And as you know, one of the disciples decided to step out of the boat and walk towards Jesus. And as he's walking towards Jesus and the disciples are looking at him in awe, well, as you know, he loses his focus, he falls into the water, and he becomes vulnerable. The Bible doesn't say vulnerable, but it says that he was struggling, he was drowning, and he was reaching up to God saying, God, well, not God, Jesus, please rescue me, help me, save me. And the end point of that story was that disciple, that human, although was in a vulnerable place and he was struggling, he feared even death. He got closer to Jesus than the other ones who were just spectating their comfortable place. This one disciple got lifted by the hand of Jesus, embraced and supported by Jesus in his moment of vulnerability, as to where in the moment of comfort, when everyone else was in a stable and a consistent place, although they were close to Jesus, they were not as close. Let me ask you this question, and we're going to start with Liz here. Liz, what is the importance of being vulnerable? Why should we take the example of the disciple who approached Jesus and got to unsteady, unpredictable waters when we could stay in our perfectly safe and secure boat and spectate from a distance? Why is it important to take that initiative and become vulnerable in the context of sharing our difficulties with people and loving people when that may be difficult?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that story about Jesus. I think I always have a saying, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think there's a lot in that phrase, but it basically is that in our journey with God, and even with relationships with people and the journey of life, as there are challenges, as there are things, there's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be surprises that may not be comfortable, but there is movement. Even in science, there needs to be movement. Even in physics, right? Even in if you're into space or what, there's always movement in life, right? And even as we are walking our life with God, there's always changes. If you are moving along and you are being exposed to different experiences, different people, different things, you will grow and learn from it. And yes, there may come new vulnerabilities. Every season has something different. And with new vulnerabilities, as I said before, not only are you gaining more like strength in a different way, but you are also being more resilient to things. And that's only in this example with Jesus, this disciple, he was able to learn about God, about Jesus, in a different way that the others didn't, because they remained in their comfort zone. They never, unless there was a different, whenever they ran into a different situation that made them get out of their comfort zone, then they would experience Jesus' personality, character, and love. When we go back to talking about love, and we read in the Bible how God is love, and that right there shows us, that story right there shows us that even in our vulnerabilities, even and when we try to go out of our comfort zone and find something new and different, Jesus is always going to be there. He's always going to be ready and walking you alongside that road, that pathway, that journey, and with you hand on hand, and guiding you to what needs to be done, to where you need to go, to the purpose, to fulfill the purpose that God has for you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Yes, you probably have heard those words, but it is real when you are actually going to step out of your comfort zone and you experience that and live that, then you know it is true. And it's always important for us to learn and be open to new opportunities, because that's what Jesus did. If we look at what Jesus's way, the way he lived, he was always from place to place. He was always meeting different people and speaking to different people and going and meeting different places. But one thing I will encourage people is that before you take that next step, pray about it. Pray about it. Seek God into this decision that you want to take. Is it is it from God? And let God give you discernment and wisdom as to where to step and when to step. Because if it's towards Jesus, you will be great. You will be more than okay. You will be safe. When we're talking about these safe places and safe, how to set people, you will be with God. But if you are detouring to a different place where that's not where God wanted you to be, then that's where you got to pray harder about it, because that way God can lead you to that. I will rest my case there.
Excellent. So Liz has just made it very clear why it is important, why it is so crucial that we need to be vulnerable. Sebastian, let me get your input here. And let's specify this just a little more, because now we're going to take our two topics, love and vulnerability, and see if we can combine them. I'd like to give you 2 minutes here, Sebastian. We know now that it is important to be vulnerable in general for progress, for all the reasons that Liz explained here. In the specifics of love, why is it important to be vulnerable when it comes to the concept of receiving love and loving others? And what potential benefits or progress can we make by being vulnerable in the concept of love?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, going off of what Liz, I think she was talking about how there's always movement, right, in just everything we see. But I think there's also life is full of growth and seasons, right? Whether we like it or not, we get older. I'm feeling that now. I'm 32. My body does not heal the same way it did when I was 22, and so things change. And I love what Josh had mentioned too about kind of what Lightbearer is, kind of the most basic level of love, right? That the unit, the unit of three, right? And then you look at the Trinity as well, and how beautiful that is. But I think, yeah, putting it together, love and vulnerability. I wonder, and I'm curious to see if it's a far-fetched statement, but to say that there really can't be true love without true vulnerability, to an extent, right? Obviously, there's always levels that we keep, even from our spouses or our family members, that only God truly knows, and areas in our lives maybe that we ourselves aren't fully aware of, that only God knows of, right? But I think the deeper we want to go in love, the deeper we want to be in relationship with people, the deeper we're going to have to navigate in being okay with being vulnerable. And that's going to take a lot. And for many of us that, whether we're extroverted or introverted, wherever we are in life, it's really opening ourselves up, first of all, to God and saying, God, kind of David does this a lot in the Psalms. Search my heart, God, see if there's anything in me. Usually he's talking about any iniquity or wickedness, but allowing God to go into my heart and see what is it in there that that resists me from opening up fully to people and trusting and wanting to have a relationship, not where I know I'm the only one beneficiary, but where I'm okay sharing and loving others that are around me. So I think, yeah, it's nearly impossible to have true love without true vulnerability, because we all have that desire, as you mentioned, right? Maslow's, the hierarchy of needs. There is this desire that we have internally and innately, whether we believe or not in some higher power, to love and be loved. And it's hard to do that if we're not vulnerable. So.
Amazing. Josh, my friend, we're going to finish this with you. The audience may be saying, okay, well, I hear what I need to do. I understand what I need to do. Now, how do I do it? Josh, how can we learn or improve our ability to love and be vulnerable? And this idea of it takes being vulnerable in order to truly love. What are some steps or what are some things that we could do in order to become more vulnerable or love in a more genuine and real way, especially when it comes to new people, new relationships, new communities?
So I had this math book. I can't remember what grade it was, but it was kind of this very interesting topic one time, and I just happened to read it, and it was called the GTR method: guess, test, revise. So what it was teaching you was, hey, in a math problem, sometimes if you're looking for a variable, right? It was essentially trying to teach you a form of algebra, like x plus 2 equals 3, right? Solve for x. How do you do that? Well, you can actually just kind of throw in numbers there and see what kind of makes the equation work, right? Sometimes that's what's required to be vulnerable. Sometimes you have to guess, test, revise. Not everybody that you share with in a vulnerable fashion is going to work out fantastically for you. Sometimes that's not. People are people. They are going to fail, including yourself, including ourselves. We're going to fail because we are human beings. But if we never give it a chance, then we will never see victory or defeat. Just like what Teddy Roosevelt said, if you never step in the arena and you're only a spectator, You won't even know what it is to be defeated. You won't know what it is to win if you never step on the court, if you never step in the arena. This is, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and practice simply having a conversation with someone, right? Some of us, I think, and I'm definitely one of those that was very shy growing up. I wouldn't talk to anyone, even family members that I knew were my family. It was just like, I didn't see you all the time. I don't want to talk to you. But if you actually start to have those conversations with people that are around you, maybe they're at work, maybe they're at church, maybe they're at, the court that you show up to, whether it's pickleball or basketball or the soccer field or whatever, and you actually put yourself out there to have a conversation, that may be the conversation that changes your relational life. Maybe that person ends up being your spouse because you had the courage to have a conversation. Maybe that person becomes your best friend and it's somebody that you can truly, truly trust and lean on because you had a conversation. Stepping out in vulnerability is something that is a requirement in this, and it takes action, actual physical action of doing something and seeing what the results are. And it is okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to guess, test, and then revise what that looks like. Of course, do this with some sort of level of intelligence or level of thought when you approach the situation. Don't just go willy-nilly at it, but go into it in a way that says, hey, I'm okay before stepping into this. I know I'll be okay on the other end of this, no matter what happens. And I know that I have the ability to go and revise whatever this is to see how I can become a more relational human being.
Amazing. Liz, Josh, Sebastian, we want to thank you so much for joining us today and your incredible insight, your wise words that I don't doubt that God put in you and inspired you to say to reach someone out in the great world there is. Thank you so much for joining us, audience, as well. We appreciate your time with being with us here in the online church. Just something to share. Pastor Chris wanted me to forward with you. Those of you who are joining us through the link that you receive via your text messages should at some point today or in the next few hours receive a link to fill out a survey. It would be greatly appreciated if you took time to fill out the survey. It'll help us improve and help us provide a much better program for you and meet your needs. Liz, Josh, Sebastian, again, we wish you the best. Everyone joining us, we wish you the best. God bless you all. And until the next one, I'm Johnny Villamil. We'll see you around. God
See you
bless.
guys. Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.